Welcome back to another episode of Fresh Ink. We're here in the studios again with my main man's Adam and Zach. We're going to be taking a little left turn here from what our normal topics are, covering some ground that I know both of you are very familiar with. Certifiable experts.
Yes, maybe.
Definitely.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about the NBA and basketball memorabilia as a whole. With the NBA season starting, a lot of new changes going on. Now's as good a time as any to talk about not only the NBA, but basketball memorabilia as a whole. So heading into the new season, what do you guys have on your minds as far as interesting storylines? You know, we had a lot of superstars moving, new super teams, if you will.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me is kind of the balance now of the NBA. We're so used to super teams and, teams that were so loaded, like Golden State, Cleveland, Miami, 5 years back, that it's nice and refreshing now that really anyone has a shot. I mean, even like the Clippers, I would give them to be my favorite, but Paul George is hurt. You got Houston with Harden and Westbrook, which on paper should be easily the best team, but it's the Rockets. They never seem to close it out.
Right.
So, I mean, they're even talking about like Golden State not making the postseason this year because Klay Thompson's out. So it's like to see a postseason without Golden State pretty much leaves it open to anybody to win. Toronto doesn't have Kawhi. So really my storyline is who's going to take it all.
Yeah, what about for you, Zach? What are you keeping your eyes on this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same narrative. I mean, you have so many teams, I think, that now have two really good players on the team, rounded out with good role players. You don't really have that. You don't have a Golden State that has Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson all on the floor. You don't have a Miami Heat with LeBron, Dwayne, and Chris Bosh all out there. But I think there's still some really good teams that are really going to step up this year. And I mean, you got Dallas now that they have Doncic and Kristaps out there. I think that's going to be an exciting team. I think Toronto's still going to be good though. They did great. Last night was the two opening games for the NBA season, and Freddie VanVleet looked great with like 34 points, and Pascal Siakam just signed that massive extension and went out and had 30-plus points and like 18 boards. I mean, he just absolutely killed it. So, I don't know. I mean, the NBA should be more exciting to watch this year. But again, for some reason, it always seems to come back around where there's not as much excitement in the regular season as there is the postseason. The postseason comes around and everyone is just obsessed with the NBA.
And I think this year is a year we're going to kind of see that switch because, I mean, you even have teams like Sacramento now who like nobody even on paper puts down to win anything, but they're got a shot.
Yeah, just re-signed Buddy Hield.
Buddy Hield. I mean, that's actually a under-the-radar big signing. Is Harrison Barnes still there?
I think so.
Yeah, so I mean, they got some talent there. But teams like that, I mean, it's weird to say when, really the biggest favorite in the league is a team like Milwaukee or like Portland or Denver, where, markets where you're not getting a ton of media coverage outside of maybe your one-star player. So, you got teams like New York who are probably going to be bad. The LA teams will be exciting because they have two good players, and they're two contenders too. But, I think it's just really spread out as far as markets go, as far as players go, and I think the regular season will be a lot more exciting than we've seen in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think more teams are going to be competing really to make the playoffs, and that 8 seed is really going to be a stronger 8 seed than what we've seen previously.
And I think it's not going to be your typical East or an 8 seed where the team competing for the 8 spot is they're both 6 games under 500, and it's under 500. What bad team's going to make it? But I think it'll still be close.
It's not the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, exactly. The Pistons getting in with 8 wins under 500, but. I think it's going to be, you're going to see a lot better records top to bottom. Not so much dominant teams, but more of a spread out balanced league, which I think is good for the sport.
Yeah, I think for the first time in a couple years, it's not, we're just waiting for the Warriors in Cleveland to get to the finals.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the past couple of years, they've been so dominant that it's like, why are we even playing regular season games? We know how this story ends. Let's just get here. Yep. And even, speaking to being a more competitive regular season, you kind of saw that with the San Antonio Spurs, who I don't know if they're so much the originators of it, but the term load management, has been a pretty popular term nowadays. And you really saw it with them and maybe the Miami Heat when they had the big three because they could afford to, but they would rest players during the regular season, give them nights off that 10, 20 years ago players couldn't afford to.
Right.
So maybe now with teams having more spread out talent, there's better teams across the board. Maybe you're not going to see that as much.
Sure.
But, shifting the focus, we're not going to give you a full season preview, of course. Definitely not going to go point by point, team by team. But we'll split it into two conferences, Eastern and West. So looking at the West, I think the number one storyline involves LA in one way or another. I think it's safe to say, with LeBron James coming back from a disappointing first year, no ways to work around that. It's definitely disappointing when you sign that deal. You go to LA and you perform like that.
Right.
But getting Anthony Davis is a big help. They made all the trades to get rid of all their players, so now it's officially LeBron's team. Whoever the coach is, it doesn't matter. It's LeBron's team, no matter
totally.
what. And then, of course, you have Kawhi Leonard and PG-13 going there,
PG-13, yeah.
Yeah, so, that's a big storyline. Can the Clippers step out of the Lakers' shadow for once? I think that has to be the biggest storyline, and maybe the second one, you already brought this up, but the Warriors, they're not the Warriors of the old. There's no Kevin Durant. Klay Thompson's out until at least the All-Star break,
right.
But they're saying he might not play at all this season.
Yeah, I think at that point you just sit him unless you're a top 3 seed or whatever.
Yeah, they did get D'Angelo Russell, who I think is, he's not the biggest name in the world, but he's a pretty darn good player.
Yeah, he's good for
Absolutely.
sure.
And, everyone's talking about where will this person sign, where will that person sign, and, he kind of flew under the radar a little bit when they were able to trade for him. So I think as far as a big couple storylines, that's it. Is there anything else that I might have missed that you're thinking about?
Yeah, no, I think, again, going back to Portland and Denver, two teams that, they've always made the playoffs the last 2-3 years, but they're always the 4 or 5 seed. A couple times got bounced in the first round, but both teams made a push. I think they both went to, the final, whatever, 4 semi-conference finals or whatever. But, I think those two teams are going to be the ones that sneak out. Portland's stacked, obviously, with Lillard and McCollum, and then you got Denver with Jokic and couple nice pieces there around him. I think those are going to be the two that are compete for that 1 and 2 spot in the West.
Yeah, that was one of the points I forgot to mention as well, is the rise of Denver Nuggets.
Yeah.
Because they're a young team, they're on the rise. Jamal Murray and Jokic, like you were saying, those are two big name players. And then also they have Michael Porter Jr. coming back.
Yeah.
Sat out all of last year, top draft pick.
Ben Simmons are out.
Yeah.
Sat out the whole year. Yeah.
So can he still win Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, Ben Simmons did.
They haven't switched that rule yet?
Ben Simmons did, yeah. It's bold.
So, that's definitely a team to keep an eye on. Who are you keeping an eye on out there?
The Pels, honestly.
Ew,
the New Orleans Pels. I think...
You mean the New Orleans Zions?
Yes, but Zion's injured right now.
And they actually played well last night.
And, they lost to Toronto, but you have to think, Toronto has all the same pieces minus Kawhi. And they played a number of games last year without Kawhi and still were the number 1 seed. Siakam is unbelievable, but to step away from them, the Pels, they've got Drew Holiday, who has been in the league for how many years and is just so vastly underrated. I think Lonzo Ball is actually going to play better than people think.
Right. They
still have Brandon Ingram. They've got top to bottom a very, very strong team that I think is going to compete this year. I don't think they're going to be a top 3 seed, but I could see them actually cracking the playoffs and being a 5 or a 6 seed and really giving some teams some headaches, especially when Zion comes back.
Can you imagine ESPN if Zion Williamson is in the playoffs and TNT?
It's gonna. It's literally gonna be ESPN on Brett Favre retirement and LBJ Miami Heat era. It's gonna have that much significance on it.
I'd be okay with that because Zion's likable though. So I like Zion. I don't think anyone dislikes him. So it's hey, if you want to cover him,
time.
Yeah, we'll see. I was a big LeBron guy.
Sure.
I was a big LeBron guy at the beginning too, and then
kind of fell off the
took
bandwagon.
its course. Yeah, so we'll see. But I like Zion, so I wouldn't hate that.
Yeah, I definitely think it'll get media coverage would definitely get out of control if they make it there. Which, like you said, Zion's a likable guy. He seems to be having fun with all the spotlight being on him.
Yeah.
So
that's what's so crazy to me though is the Pelicans are still under the radar even with having Zion. All of the highlight has just been on Zion Williamson and his stats and everything leading up to this season and how good is Zion going to be this year, but nothing's been emphasized on the New Orleans Pelicans. They have Zion, give them some credit.
Yeah, true.
And while the West may seem wide open now that the Warriors aren't the dominant Warriors and a lot of superstars moving from different teams, I think the Eastern Conference is as wide open as it's ever been. We saw the dominant Cavs teams when LeBron was there and Kyrie. The Raptors last year were, a pretty dominant team, popular pick, given that they got Kawhi. But at the same time, there still are those two kind of big name teams that everyone is assuming is going to make it to the end, Philadelphia and Boston, and then of course the aforementioned Milwaukee Bucks. To be honest,
the Bucks are the favorite, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, there are some favorites, but at the same time, it kind of seems like it's more open for the taking than it has been in previous years.
Yeah, and I think going back to teams competing for that 8 seed, I think that's where you're going to see the dogfight, where you see the Pacers and the Pistons and the Bulls, all from that same division. They're going to be competing for that 6, 7, 8 spot. You got teams like Charlotte. Who are going to be in the mix. Miami now with Jimmy Butler. It's like that bottom 4 seeds in that Eastern Conference playoffs. You could just throw darts, and I wouldn't be surprised to see any team there. The only team I really think is going to be totally out of it is Cleveland. They really don't have much going on. They're a couple good rookies, but I don't see them winning more than 12 games. Brooklyn's another one to look at too. Now that they have Kyrie, no Kevin Durant this year, but they're gearing up for a nice run in the future.
I think theirs is kind of like we'll give you this year,
right?
Whatever, we'll sign you the contract.
I think they're good enough to make the playoffs, being with Kyrie, and then there's some good supporting cast around them. They got Prince from Atlanta, so I think they're going to be decent. I think they'll sneak in a little bit more of a veteran presence than a team like the Bulls or some of those younger guys. Charlotte, now that Kemba Walker's gone, so I think they have an opportunity to make it. But yeah, it's totally wide open in that bottom half.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm excited to see what the 76ers do this year. Are
you still trusting the process?
The process has been trusted. Already.
Yeah, I think it
has it though.
Yeah, they have all the pieces. It's on them if they don't.
They do. They really do, and I think this is the year that they have to pull the trigger and win it. It's do or die at this point. And yeah, they've got Milwaukee to really compete with. I see them being the powerhouse in the Eastern Conference this year. Not so much Boston anymore. They're still young. They got Jaylen Brown. They got Jason Tatum. They've got Kemba.
Your boy Gordon Hayward.
Don't forget about Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, Boston will be all right.
Yeah, I think they'll be decent.
Yeah, but I don't know. I could see the 76ers. I see them in the Eastern Conference Finals this year with Milwaukee. They took Toronto to 7 games, which almost every team seemed to have done. But I feel like if they would have came out of that, it would have been a lot of momentum going into the Milwaukee series, and that could have been really interesting. And I think a lot of people expected that matchup, honestly. No one really expected Toronto to go as far as they did. Kawhi just took over.
Yeah.
But I don't know. 76ers for me are the team to watch in the East this year.
I think another sneaky one was the Knicks. The Knicks are going to be bad.
Oh my God! Don't say that.
But they got a lot of pieces
now.
Lot of pieces.
They
RJ
got
Barrett.
A lot of hate towards them in the offseason.
I don't think they're going to be good. But I think they're going to surprise.
I don't
people.
think it was so much hate. It was so much people laughing at them because they went so out for Kevin Durant, and he was like,
and Kyrie and everyone, and they just fell flat on all of them. But they got good complementing pieces.
I think RJ Barrett is the piece to build around, and then you got guys coming in like Taj Gibson, who's a veteran leader, Bobby Portis, 2 former Bulls actually.
Love me some Bobby Portis.
I think they got Julius Randle, so it's a lot of good depth and a good core. Not so much one that's going to win this year, but they're going to be respectable, and they're going to give every team in that NBA a game every single night. So I could see them winning 30-some games and being right around that 8 seed.
Yeah, the point I'll make about the 76ers, going back to your point, Zach, is it kind of seems every year, or at least past a couple of years, that they've been all in. Last year they made the trade for Tobias Harris, Jimmy Butler, and it was kind of seeming like they were mortgaging their future for right now, where they were trading all their chips in. Let's cash it in. We got our young talent. Let's get it now. And they didn't.
True.
One good or bad bounce away from beating from beating the Raptors. So they came pretty close. They're a team that, like you guys said, they're going to be there no matter what. But it's what is it going to take for them to get over that hump? That it just the process is done. Like you guys are saying, they're a good team. They're competing every year, but they got to get past that other point. And, I don't know if they necessarily brought in the pieces to do it. They did bring in Al Horford. Ben Simmons allegedly can shoot threes now.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Joel Embiid is, of course, one of the most dominant big men in the game today. So they definitely have the pieces. It'll be interesting to see.
Totally.
Moving away from a season preview, we're going to take a look at the memorabilia world as far as it goes with basketball and sports memorabilia. And I'll pose this question to you, Adam, since you are the resident expert for sports memorabilia. Basketball, I think the past decade for sure has really taken off with popularity. Everyone thinks of MLB and baseball as America's pastime, but really, to me, NBA is the second most popular sport. in North America at least.
Yeah, no,
definitely worldwide for sure.
Yeah.
But it kind of hasn't translated to the world of sports memorabilia. You know, it's not as popular as football, as baseball, or even hockey, you know, in certain parts of the world.
Sure.
So what is it about basketball and basketball memorabilia to where the rise and popularity of the game hasn't translated to increase in demand for NBA?
Well, I think we see a lot of success and interest in football is because you can see right here all these football helmets. Football, it's easier to collect because you have a little bit more of things to collect, like mini helmets and full-size helmets. Basketball, it's tough. If you really want to represent your team, you really have to kind of settle for a jersey, which is cool. Mm-hmm. But if you want a jersey, it comes with framing it. So you're kind of paying double the cost of an item. You know, in basketball, you can collect shoes, but again, doesn't really relate necessarily back to your team. You're not getting, you know, Bulls logos or Knicks logos on autographed shoes. And then basketballs too. It's just the equipment you use is more of a general item where it doesn't really connect, in at least my opinion, to someone who is maybe a diehard for a team.
Yeah, I mean, how many different ways can you collect an orange basketball and have them stand out?
So, I mean, you see these helmets in football. It's easy to display. It's fun to display. And then you have companies like Riddell who are constantly coming up with new creative ideas. The NBA and basketball in general just doesn't necessarily have anything other than jerseys to kind of keep up with that memorabilia demand.
Yeah, I think you've seen in the past couple of years they've kind of been moving away from the traditional jerseys, you know, the city jerseys, right. the different jersey styles they have. They're trying to get a little more creative, you know.
Right.
They've always had the Christmas jerseys and what was it, the Shooters jersey a couple years ago? That's terrible with the sleeves.
Yeah, they had the sleeves. Yeah,
that's awful.
The black and white ones.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they're at least trying to at least, you know, make it somewhat creative. And
they do a good job about that, too. And, again, going back to my opinion, I think NBA fans in general are different than, like, say, football fans where they're a little bit more into wearing the jersey, the fashion of it. You know, they're video games, 2K. They're really engrossed in like the culture of it more so than they are the items and the memorabilia. A little more new school, where almost memorabilia in a way could be considered old school, because some of these new school basketball NBA fans, they want the new jersey or the new game or the new digital media of some sort that relates back to the NBA as opposed to some signed item.
Yeah, and you know, Zach, you're a little newer to the memorabilia game, but you know, from what you've seen so far, what's your best guesses as to why it hasn't taken off?
I mean, mine's kind of a different take, and it all circles back to the fan base. I feel like you were saying, the new fans in the NBA, almost. They seem to be more attached to players than they are the teams. And even with that being said, you're seeing players switch teams so often.
Right.
So for you to go all out and get a jersey and get it framed and everything, and then 2 years later them switch teams, it diminishes the value of that jersey, and it diminishes the time and effort you put into getting that and putting it up there. I just don't see there being as much of a fan affiliation for NBA teams. I mean, you see celebrities that go out and are always courtside. I mean, you got Drake and
courtside at LA Lakers games is Hollywood A-listers
exactly.
Right there.
I mean, you see them being out at games, but when I think of it, like even in my circle of friends and everything, granted, I am from Michigan, Southeast Michigan. Detroit hasn't been anything special, but like we're never talking
since the Bad Boys.
I mean, there isn't that much talk about like your city team. I don't know how it is here in Chicago. I haven't been here long enough. I mean, obviously we're gonna get to that. Obviously, the Bulls have a long history and everything, but it just seems to me that everyone is always focusing on the top players for the year. I mean, people jump on the Giannis bandwagon or the Steph Curry bandwagon and get those jerseys, but not signed. They just get those jerseys to wear. It just, I don't know. I think it's such a player-driven market and not a team-driven market, whereas the NFL, you're 100% in on teams, and even if a player is good for an opposing team, you're not going to support them because you're so diehard for your own.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the NBA fan spends their money a little bit differently than the NFL fan or baseball fan too.
Yeah, and I mean, Zach kind of stole my thunder with my point. So, you know, with being it's more players than teams, because I can definitely relate. You know, living in Florida when I was growing up, people would always ask you, who's your favorite basketball team? And I'm like, well, the Magic, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Because they were good in the 90s.
Right.
But, I mean, I was a big Dwight Howard fan when he was there, so I'd always say, you know, he's one of my favorite players, but I don't really have a favorite team. But I'll go a different route and say the lack of supply, really. You know, football and baseball, you see them every weekend at autograph signing shows. You don't really see a lot of basketball guys.
No.
And if you do, it's older guys who maybe don't have necessarily the same following as a current player does. They might be in the Hall of Fame, but like they went in the Hall of Fame in 1983.
Right.
Nobody nowadays is really collecting them. But out of the current players, I mean, who do you see signing? There's Steph Curry, who does it once in a while, but he's super expensive.
Right.
Giannis just did his first public signing, I think, recently. I think it was his first.
Yeah.
Either way, he did a public signing. He was expensive. So you don't really see the supply and variety that you do in the other sports.
Yeah, it's hard to say if it's maybe there's no supply because there's no demand, or there's no demand because there's no supply.
It's like which came first, the chicken or the egg?
It's hard to say. I definitely agree with you, though. I mean, if you wanted to kind of go online or go somewhere and get your favorite player's autographed jersey, it's a lot harder than it is for football. It's just not out there as much. And again, I don't really know why. I mean, I don't know if it's the demand or the supply or vice versa, what the deal is.
Yeah, send us your questions and comments on that one. We want to know what you guys
think
about
year
that.
for cards, though. Huge year for cards. I mean, now with this rookie
For
class,
basketball cards?
It's got to be the Zion
crazy.
effect, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean, everyone's
uh,
chasing Zion like you chase Brady or whatever.
Yeah, it's Prism is the big one right now. It comes out in the beginning of the year, and some of those boxes just, they retail for X amount, and then they're just like going on the secondary market for like 5 times that. So everyone wants that Zion card. Contenders, Collegiate already came out, and same thing. People were going nuts for all those Duke players, RJ Barrett and Zion and all them.
Is there as much a demand for players beyond the superstar players like you might see in other sports, to where, like Bol is a big name in college, but he didn't get drafted high?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. And Panini, who does the basketball cards, they can kind of control that too. I mean, they could, like back when Dak Prescott was a rookie, they flooded the boxes with Dak Prescott stuff because he was a middle round pick, you know, similar to how like Ryan Finley was flooded this year. But then as Dak got better, they like slowly held back their supply of autographs for Dak.
Right.
So it's kind of like Panini. It's up to Panini, but obviously the big guys like Zion and RJ and Kobe White for the Bulls, it's like they keep those in limited supply because they're creating that demand. Right. Typically how it works in cards too is that year's autos are the rookie class. You're not going to see like LeBron James, right? Because he has an exclusive with Upper Deck anyway. But I'm not going to open a 2019 box to get like Giannis. I mean, he might be in some, but it's majority rookie class throughout the entire season.
Players that you're kind of holding on to, hoping.
That's how they're making their sell points is the rookies. Get them now while they're hot, type thing.
We mentioned the team earlier, kind of skirted around the issue. The last basketball topic we had is one that's near and dear to our hearts, being a Chicagoland-based company, the Chicago Bulls. So I will pose the question, and we can tackle this a couple different ways, but what happened to such a historic franchise to where in the 90s, everyone wanted Jordan, everyone wanted Pippen, everyone wanted Rodman. As crazy as he was, everyone liked him as a player. But, you kind of saw the Bulls, who were a team that everyone was chasing after, especially for memorabilia. Even now with Jordan, I know it's that's a whole different, issue.
Right.
But,
like Jordan's his own brand.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he's his own brand, but in memorabilia, it's Jordan memorabilia, not NBA.
He's like the Tom Brady.
Yeah, totally different.
Basketball.
But, you don't see that demand for Bulls players now, or I don't know, the last 10 years, 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, how much time you got? I can go on for this for a long time. I mean, obviously, it's tough to follow up that great of the history in the 90s. And then I think they got, not close, but they were on a nice pace when Derrick Rose was in his prime. That injury, I think, totally set him back 5 years, if not more. If he was still in his prime, I think never got hurt, I think he'd still be one of the better players in the NBA. But yeah, they've been rebuilding for so long, and I think they wanted to do it around Jimmy Butler. They quickly found out that he's not a guy you really build around necessarily, so that kind of set him back a year or two more. But luckily, that trade worked out in their favor with getting Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen. I mean, Chris Dunn, he's kind of fallen off a little bit, but he's still a nice piece on your roster. So that trade helped, and I think even this year they're going to start climbing back. They've really hit on all their draft picks with Markkanen, Wendell Carter, and I think Kobe White this year is going to be one of the better rookies. So I think we're going to see them sneak into the playoffs. They're going to get back to form, but in the NBA, if you don't have two superstars, you're not going anywhere. So of any of these guys, if any of them can be superstars, that'd be great. I don't think they have one, but they have a lot of good players. So
they're definitely a trendy pick. I think a lot of people are picking them as like their sleeper team.
I think they're a team of really good third options. With Markkanen, with LaVine, with Otto Porter, Kobe White, Wendell Carter. I mean, a lot of depth there, a lot of young depth, but they need really that one veteran leader, and hopefully one of these guys can grow into that so they have a legit shot.
And what do you got to say about it? What's your opinion, as somebody who has been the on the opposite side of the Bulls.
Yeah,
growing up in Detroit.
So I'll start with their current roster. I think you guys actually do have some good building blocks in place. You definitely have pieces to build around, and you guys have gotten good complementary pieces. I think Satoransky, I believe that's Satoransky. He just won the starting job as your point guard. He's been in the league for numerous years, so I think that helps take some of the pressure off Kobe White. He comes in as like your sixth man. So I mean, that helps his development, that helps his confidence, because now he's not out there playing the number one point guard all the time and getting locked down. I mean, he's got some more room to actually grow. So I think that'll help you guys. You'll definitely have some bench points. Name you didn't mention was again, I might botch this, Gafford, your center. He was also doing really well in the offseason, and I think he'll come in as, again, that 7 or 8 position role.
Yeah, he's a lightning rod. He's like, he'll give you defense, he'll block some shots, he'll do some dunks.
I'll do all the hustle plays.
Right. Yeah, kind of like the Joakim Noah. I mean, not to that level, but he's like your energy guy when he comes off the bench.
I think having Kobe White and having Gafford in on that second line of rotation, being able to provide the spark and energy that both of them do, I think is really going to benefit you guys in the long haul.
A big one too is Thaddeus Young. He came in to be a bench guy, so he's a good veteran leader, but he's not the guy who's going to take you to the playoffs. But he's a good guy you can learn from.
So you guys are very well rounded.
Yeah.
I do like Zach LaVine as a player. I haven't seen enough of Lauri Markkanen to really give you an honest depiction of
I mean, he's a 7-footer that can shoot the three. So I mean, anytime. I mean, that's the current NBA now. Yep. I think if back in the day when like Carmelo was a free agent, or like the LeBron, Bosh, Wade, if they ever got a player like that in a free agency, they're there. I mean, they're a top 2-3 seed in the NBA. They've just always been struggling to get that free agent, which this year there were some ones out there, but they never really had a shot at getting any of them. I mean, you're dealing with the salary cap and stuff too, so that's always tough. But yeah, they're one really big piece away from being legitimately good.
That was kind of leaning into my point. You guys brought up excellent points as well, but the organization as a whole, has kind of been the laughingstock of the NBA. Fire Garpax is one of the top trends in Chicago during basketball season every year.
I think it's a funny trend. I mean, I don't totally disagree with it. I mean, I don't think I would go as far to say as fire them, because they've always drafted very well.
Right.
I mean, Jimmy Butler was a late round pick. They always know how to hit their spots when it comes to drafting. They just don't really seem to have a handle on the free agency scene. Nobody ever wants to come to Chicago, and it might not be their fault. I mean, when you could go west or south during the winter as a free agent, I mean, I probably would too. Who wants to come to Chicago during the middle of winter? Probably not many people, but it's just, I mean, they built that team with Derrick Rose. That was a great team they built. I mean, they just haven't won anything yet. I mean, in most sports, they would be fired by now, but they have a good relationship with the owner. I wouldn't say I'd go as far as to fire him, but hopefully this go around works out with all these young guys.
Yeah, and like you said, that maybe its players don't want to come here, or they can't convince them to come here as free agents. And I think that kind of leads into, no matter how long he's been away, like no matter what, you're stepping into the shadow of Jordan when you come into Chicago.
That's always true.
I mean, he's the owner. Everyone now knows him as the owner of, Charlotte, but you're still stepping into his world, his arena, his city, even though he hasn't been here in, however many years it's been.
Yeah, and that's why they got so lucky with Derrick Rose being from Chicago.
Yeah, the hometown kid.
I mean, that was like, that couldn't have been put on a platter any better
Hollywood
for them.
story right
I mean,
there.
It was just like out of a movie, but again, the injury really set him back, and I don't know if we'll ever have anyone like that in the next decade.
That was the piece, honestly, right there. If you would have had him healthy for another handful of years, that's where you would have won something.
You still had a couple years left of Noah. Butler was just coming into his own. So
I think it was just unfortunate circumstances for your franchise. I mean, you guys have done the correct things. Like you said, you've hit on your draft picks, and Derrick Rose was that once-in-a-generation player that, unfortunately, injuries derailed his career and derailed the franchise and deprived them of actually winning that top.
Was he number 1 overall?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to take Michael Beasley so bad that I liked Derrick Rose, but I was like, oh, Michael Beasley is the guy.
Yeah.
Well, that couldn't have turned out any worse for you.
Right.
Yeah, honestly. So
I mean, like hitting on your number 1 draft pick and having it be, a franchise player, generational player like that. I mean, and then have it end the way it did. You can't really fault them for that.
No. And I mean, the guys they've picked up, we mentioned Markkanen, Carter, White, they were all the 7th pick of the draft. Mm-hmm. And you kind of look at the couple names before and then the couple names after, and there's like a big gap. I mean, the year Markkanen went out, it was like he would have been if you were to redo it, he would have been the third pick that year, second pick that year. Yeah. Wendell Carter, I mean, he got hurt last year, but you would probably push him up a little bit after seeing what he did in his rookie season. So they always seem to be right in that sweet spot at number 7, and the young guys are growing, but again, still one big piece away.
And the last question, get you guys out of here on this, is if you had one jersey that you could get signed by a current player today, who are you chasing?
Ooh. I'll let you start with that one.
I mean,
you
honestly,
can't say Blake Griffin just because he plays for.
Let's pick someone that's not on our hometown team.
I'm not allowed.
No hometown teams.
I mean, I really like Giannis. I'm going to be honest. He's brought that Milwaukee franchise out of the dust. I mean, they were nothing before him. At least in the past 2 decades, they've been nothing without him. And he's just an exciting player to watch. I mean, also the name on the back of the jersey is kind of fun to look at. And I don't know. I think if I had one player to pick to have their jersey, it'd be Giannis.
I don't really have a guy in the NBA, but I have a couple. I really like Lillard for.
Ooh, Damian Lillard's
he's just a cool guy, and he's kind of didn't do the conventional routes of the NBA. Went to a smaller school, but he doesn't back down from anybody. So I've always appreciated him as a player. I really like Donovan Mitchell in Utah. Yep. I just love the Utah jerseys. I'd probably pick one of their crazy throwbacks to have him sign. And then Embiid in Philadelphia. He's always been, again, kind of one of those guys that just doesn't really back down. He's kind of a clown, but in a good way. He's always making people laugh and stuff. So he's an exciting athlete to follow. I could pick a couple. I mean, that's just kind of goes to show you what the NBA is. There's a lot of good personalities there and a lot of good people to follow, and it's not just the quarterback of every team that you like. There's a lot of good personality there.
Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I would have taken Russell Westbrook Thunder jersey just because I've always liked Russell Westbrook, and I don't know, I know he could be kind of an asshole and a dick sometimes, but I like that in a player.
Yeah,
I like that killer mentality.
I think we like him because he's not on our team.
Yeah,
true.
But I mean, him going to the Rockets, I don't think that's going to turn out as well as everyone thinks.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like. I don't even know. I mean,
you got two guys who need the ball 24/7.
I like it better than CP3. I'll give you that. I like it better than them having Chris Paul. I've never been a big fan of Chris Paul. I'll put it. I
kind of got the feeling when that went down is when Dwight went to LA, and it was and Steve Nash. On paper, these guys are legit. Yeah. I mean, you got a bunch of MVPs playing together, and then it's it didn't actually work out as well as it.
Wait, you mean I have to pass? I don't get to score every play.
I mean, they played in OKC together before, so they know how to play with each other. But it's just a different time where you got two guys scoring 30 points a game, shooting the ball 35 times. It's I don't know how that's going to work. I hope they have rebounders because there's going to be a lot of shots put up.
Yeah, if I had to pick a current player other than Russell Westbrook, I'd go Damian Lillard. Like you said, I really like what I've seen from him as a person, not just a player.
Right.
Some of the stories and quotes you've heard. I think I remember somebody asked him if he's stressed or what pressure is, and he's it's the person who can't put food on the table at night.
Yeah.
This is a game.
Right.
And I was that means a lot coming from somebody who's at his level. That'd be one thing if a bench warmer said it, but for somebody who's a superstar,
right,
to say that, I thought that was really impressive. And then he always has him and Portland as a whole kind of have that underdog mentality that I really like, to where they're always under the radar, and they always kind of sneak into the playoffs, but then they give everyone a dogfight every round.
Right.
Well, and he's been shafted on All-Star votes before. I mean, he finally got it this past year, but in years prior, he was always getting shafted, and even NBA players were like, "Why is Damian Lillard not an All-Star?" It made no sense. And so, I mean, him and Portland have always kind of. I like them a lot.
Yeah, they're easy to root for.
Yeah, they like to keep things weird in Portland.
Yeah, that's all they got.
It's a city slogan.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Fresh Ink. If you have any tips or suggestions or reasons why basketball memorabilia hasn't taken off, or if in your mind it has and we're just not seeing it, please let us know.
Yeah, why we're wrong.
Please tell us we're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Tune in next Thursday. We'll be right back here in the studio.